Broadcasting live on the Ops Lens app, iHeartRadio, Mojo 50 Radio, and online worldwide at thepcradioshow.com.
Make sure you get over there, thepcradioshow.com, the most low-budget internet website that you'll probably ever experience. Hey, what's going on? It's me, Stu Peters, with the Patriotically Correct Radio Show, and it's good to be here. First day on Mojo 50 Radio. First day on the Ops Lens app. If you have not had an opportunity to get over there and download the Ops Lens app, you got to get in there. So if you're listening on iHeartRadio, Mojo 50 Radio, obviously you don't see me. You just get to hear this glorious nonsense. If you are on the Ops Lens app, you get over there, you download that thing, and although I don't get paid for television, you'll be able to see this beautiful mug as I work through this, the technical difficulties of being a TV show host, producer, television show, and station owner, as well as general manager. We do have a packed show today. Dustin Reichert is going to be joining us here shortly. He is an Anoka County Sheriff's Deputy, retired. He was involved in a critical incident, shooting, which resulted in death, unfortunately. He is an expert in the field of drugs and drug influence, and obviously has experience dealing with critical incidents, police use of force, and post-traumatic stress. He's the author of the book 1088 Officer Down, which is available. We'll tell you how to get that, where to get that, and we'll talk with Dustin regarding everything as it relates to use of force and obviously prolific times, us being here in Minneapolis in the wake of George Floyd dying on the streets at the hands of Minneapolis police. At least that's the narrative that you're hearing. Until recently, body cam footage was released that shows something that could potentially be different. In the midst of the coronavirus, we're all dealing with depression, we're dealing with anxiety, we're dealing with lockdowns. We don't know if our kids can go to school. It's the perfect storm, and we're going to talk about that. But in a conversation that I was having with a friend of mine on the phone the other day, I was talking to Travis, who I hold him in high regard. And I was talking about I was asking him, do you remember who we were as a country, as a people, in September of 2001, specifically on September 12th? And I told him I kind of long to go back there to September 12th, 2001, not because we celebrate the most prolific or devastating attack that America has ever seen, that the world has ever witnessed, but because what happened on our soil the very next day was even more breathtaking. Because on September 12th, 2001, it didn't matter if you were a Christian, it didn't matter if you were a high priest and dealt with Wiccan. It didn't matter if you were gay or straight, Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, any other title. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor, divorced, happily married. It didn't matter if you were white, and it didn't matter if you were black. What mattered on that day is that you were an American. It didn't matter about the physical appearance of us. It didn't matter. We didn't see each other in the natural physical light of appearance or even ideological individual belief systems with which we were raised. It didn't matter if you had a criminal history. It didn't matter if you were a celebrity from Hollywood. It didn't matter if you were a farmer from Indiana, because from Los Angeles to New York City at ground zero, the only thing that was on fire was the spirit of American patriotism. Every household from small town Iowa to the inner cities of Chicago flew a flag representing who we were, and we were angry. I remember how angry I was, especially as it came to light what actually happened. And we as Americans were angry, and most importantly, we were united together against anyone or anything that would dare try to bring our system to its knees, the very system that provides equal rights to all Americans under the Constitution, the very system that gives every American the right to free speech, the right to prosper, the freedom to believe in whatever higher power or God you so choose, and the equal right to succeed or fail. The very system that makes our nation the greatest country on the face of the planet, and that cannot be disputed. That is a fact. About 1 million legally migrate to the United States from around the world every year and call America home. Even more come here illegally and will stop at nothing, even risking their lives in most cases, to land on American soil for opportunities provided by our system of equality. They flee dangerous countries ruled by dictators with political systems that have been proven to fail their citizens time and time again. Systems like socialism, fascism, Marxism, totalitarianism. They flee so that they can escape the systemic racism and oppression of those leaders that crave nothing but power and will stop at nothing, even murder or worse, genocide, to get it. It's in these failed third world countries where citizens are being killed for being a skeptic and speaking out against their tyrannical leaders. In these countries, they're hanged for being gay. They're imprisoned for talking to their neighbors without permission from their government. Imagine that. State-sponsored government propaganda machines known as the media control the message they hear and are forced to believe because there's no alternative message, there's no debate, there's no room for the truth, because the truth is they're imprisoned. And they're slaves, given the illusion of freedom, or even worse in many countries, they're slaves without the promise of liberty. They're threatened with their own lives, with the death of their families, the murder of their wives and children, should they choose to object to these leaders or attempt to flee in search of safety and asylum. America is the greatest on the planet because it's full of Americans who care about this country. Americans that understand that we are who we are because of what we've been through together. Not just in the wake of September 11th, in attacks that forever changed us, but because of our history. Think about that. Our history as individuals has a direct result on who we become as people. Nobody can argue that. And who we become as people is a direct reflection on the experiences that we've been through, the way we were raised, the mistakes that we made in our childhoods, young adulthood, even as grown people. We're all different. Someone, for example, that grew up in a broken home, grew up poor, grew up rich, came from a divorced home, or somebody that lived like the Brady family or Wally and the Beef. People that faced adversity and killed problems with love, like the Huxtables. It's a known fact that we are who we are because of what we've been through. A German philosopher, Friedrich, and pronunciation Nietzsche, famously said that that which does not kill us makes us stronger, which is ironic, his having been rather short and miserable. But the phrase continues to resonate with American culture, even cited in recent times by Kanye West, a black hip-hop artist, best known in recent times for his unpopular support of President Trump, and now, I guess, candidate for president himself, running against the incumbent for whom he was outcasted for that support. Interesting times we're living in. But if we were all given the opportunity to go back in time and delete or cancel our mistakes and hardships, the question is, would you do that? It seems to me that that would just be wrong in so many ways because we'd have no idea who we are, how we got to this point. Most importantly, where to go from here. The fact that we have been through these things together as individuals and as a country, it gives us some self-identification. The thought that I was having is the fact that we're so polarized, and this is really going to be about race because the media is telling you that. They're framing the George Floyd death as a racist murder, and we'll get back to that. But the thought that I had was the fact that black people were owned as slaves for white colonizers is not a part of American history that any sensible person would be proud of, but proud rather of the strength leaders found to free slaves and turn our nation into one striving every day for equality, progressing every year for equal rights, giving every man, woman, and child the opportunity for an education, entrepreneurship, the pursuit of the American dream, blah, blah, blah. The idea that every person, no matter the color of their skin, sexual preference, political ideology, would be afforded the protection of rights by the documents that founded our country, and would be afforded the protection of our military, that we shall remain free thanks to the honor of brave men and women who have volunteered to make the ultimate sacrifice and die. in a pile of spent shell casings in some hellhole country that they've never been to as they confront our enemies that wish to bring us to our knees and do it on their soil so that the fight may never come to our shores again. Afforded the protection of our brave men and women in uniform that serve our communities as cops that'll run directly towards gunfire to protect people that they've never even met, without, by the way, stopping to look at the color of the skin of the person they're protecting. I'm going to go out on a limb here and just venture to guess. I'll speculate there's no instances in which a police officer has stopped to ask a potential victim if they're a Republican or a Democrat, if they're gay or straight, or who they intend to vote for on November 3rd before deciding whether or not they're going to provide police service. If they're going to pursue the criminal that did or attempted to bring harm to the safety of themselves, their property, or their family, that would just be a ridiculous notion, and nobody of sound mind would actually believe it to be true. Sadly, we're rapidly losing the sense of pride in our country. I don't think because Americans are losing their feeling of patriotism, but more because we're being programmed by a group of extremist radical Marxists that have hijacked a system. They've hijacked the Democratic political party in a desperate attempt to hold on to power, because it's a known fact that liberal policies are there will never be legislation by Democrat lawmakers that doesn't include the power, and they want to hold on to this power and then exponentially increase that power and authority every day. Laws and regulations rapidly flow out of Washington, restricting the individual liberties of citizens who are given the illusion of freedom while actually being indoctrinated starting at a very young age in our schools, where the majority of educators have adopted this theory of social justice in the name of apologizing to the world on behalf of Americans and apologizing to minorities in our own country for the very history that created us. Rather than teaching history to young and impressionable minds, we choose to delete, ignore, or cancel our history. We're trashing the textbooks that objectively depict American past events. We're removing statues from around the country, demanding reparations for the actions of our ancestors. Think about that. Liberal progressives actually embrace these events. They get excited, they get giddy about events that divide Americans and push their agenda by framing any crisis in the light of intolerance, painting it as hate or division or racism. The American media that used to bring you the news has become the propaganda machine for the extreme left. The New York Times and CNN will blatantly ignore black-on-black crime, murders involving guns in Chicago, by the way, the most gun-controlled city in America, or even violent riots in American streets resulting in the loss of life. They deny it. They shamelessly pretend it's not even happening, and if you should so dare to object to that denial, you'll be censored from social media, you'll be doxxed in real life, and you'll be called a racist, a heathen, for illustrating or sharing events on your cell phone or telling any truths about facts that unfold because it doesn't fit the agenda. In 2020, which by the way this year can go to hell, the perfect storm is upon us. The threat of the coronavirus is ruthlessly displayed on your living room television 24 hours a day using a ticker to count the deaths of Americans labeled as COVID. Masks are required in most states, even while in your car, and now I'm hearing in some states in your home. Dehumanizing people, not allowing for smiles to be seen, facial expressions to be recognized by your neighbor or by your spouse, or even by the lady at the checkout station in the supermarket. Gatherings at your local parks have no doubt been banned. You will not go to concerts or rodeos. If you do, you'll be fined, even arrested, especially if you're here in Minnesota, where Keith Ellison is the Attorney General. We'll get to him. You're undoubtedly not allowed to open the business you've risked, everything to start. Your kids may not be able to start school this fall, and don't you dare attend a church service or try to experience any fellowship that might bring you within 6 feet of another human. If your kids previously played sports, or go camping with the Boy Scouts, there's no doubt those events have been canceled or at least at very minimum postponed or restructured in the name of safety and protection. It's really mind-boggling. It's something that we've never seen before. Combined with the coronavirus, the China virus, extremist liberal progressives are using the tragic death of an African-American man in police custody to insert the false narrative of systemic racism amongst law enforcement officers across the country. The media is sponsoring a war on cops that indicts everyone wearing a badge and a gun for the actions of one man in Minneapolis. AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Nancy Pelosi, members of the squad, all of these feckless leaders will tell you that the man was murdered by a racist cop. It was a racially motivated murder. They'll tell you this before any facts have been brought before a court, before any evidence has been submitted for jury review, before any convictions or sentencing has been handed down by a district court judge. And don't take my word for it. Research this yourself. Within hours of the death of George Floyd, the mayor of that city, Jacob Fry, framed the death of George Floyd as racist and demanded the firing of any cop and the charging, by the way, criminally, of any police officer that was at or near the scene, promising citizens of Minneapolis swift justice and the fundamental change within the Minneapolis Police Department. Fry incited riots and not only allowed, but sheepishly encouraged violence against police officers, the destruction of property, ultimately the loss of life in Minneapolis, as criminal thugs filled the streets and committed felonies without the threat of arrest. There's two ways to get somebody to do something and almost always find success. One is to tell someone they can't do it. Oh, you can't do that. Because a challenge, I think, capitalizes on the competitive nature of another person, which almost always pushes them to do the impossible or accept the challenge. Excuse me. But the number two way to move a crowd in any direction you wish, and probably the most proven method of control, comes from using fear. Fear of failure, fear of misery, fear of sickness, fear of harm, fear of death. Facts don't matter when fear exists, and people are much more willing to do the unthinkable or make moves they would ordinarily question. For example, kneeling before a violent mob or willfully handing over your belongings because you've been encouraged to do so by an actual letter written to Minneapolis citizens by their brave police administrators, by the police department. We'll talk about that too with Dustin. So why are officials kneeling before violent criminal thugs in Minneapolis and around the country? If the movement to defund police is actually successful and the inmates are indeed running the jail, what can we expect to transpire on the streets of our once united country? What are the benchmarks that we're striving for? As violent rioters are shouting things like, no justice, no peace, what does justice look like? When nearly every major democratically run city is on fire, police precincts are being overtaken, cops are being shot and shot at, businesses are being attacked, and literally everything's stolen from retailers as organized groups loot and pillage merchandise, where do we go from here? The family of George Floyd has repeatedly stated that Floyd would not have wanted any of this in his name. But those messages fall on deaf ears. The carrot of peace and compromise can be held in front of the rabbit, but if he's unwilling to bite, the carrot becomes useless. The Democrat Party, my friends, has been hijacked. Democrats are good people. I know them. Some of the people that I happen to be closest to are generally liberal-minded people, and I love them. I really do. They're sensible people that typically debate small points of contention that create the proverbial divide between the donkeys and the elephants. We oftentimes joke about it at gatherings of our own, but today's radicals are the true wolves in sheep's clothing. They're camouflaged in the cloak of the donkey and blue necktie, but represent something completely different. Something we've seen time and time again, something we've seen failed, and something we've seen result in the loss of liberty, the loss of freedom, and the loss of life. They're fascists, they're Marxists, they're self-proclaimed socialists, they're racists. with one single objective, and that's to gain control and power and compliance, and they'll stop at nothing to gain the control and power to make you bow, literally on your knees, to radical political groups like Black Lives Matter. The extremist liberal left is rumored to be organizing the targeting of prominent conservatives in their homes now, and violence is being threatened at the polling booths on Election Day, and for the 100-day siege leading up to this, we're well under that now. The point is they want to escalate civil unrest leading up to Election Day. They're preparing for a new terrain. Messages have been sent out about how police are more aggressively, policing, and federal officers are enforcing things. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez can be tied to this. And PC Radio will get to the bottom of this. I promise to be that we will be relentless seekers of the truth on this program. Most of these elected officials from the radical left have no problems wearing the hat of a medical expert when they demand you wear a biosuit to get a damn haircut or prohibit you from seeing your grandma in her assisted living facility, where, by the way, they have no problems placing COVID-diagnosed elderly people as a place for them to go and die. Essentially turning nursing homes into modern-day progressive death camps. But ask them to talk to you about it directly, and they won't. If you ask for a civil debate, you'll be labeled as an extremist or a conspiracy theorist or a bigot. Well, they dismiss your invite as a setup or a hostile attack that may hurt their feelings. Janae Harteau, the former failed Minneapolis police chief, has been invited on this show, but at no surprise to PC radio staff, she has declined. Democrat leaders like Jerry Nadler have actually gone so far as to say the violent riots in Portland are a myth, and he's insinuated that it's not even really happening. These people are in complete denial. They're lying, and the media won't show you any of this. Why? In Minneapolis, the city council, along with Attorney General and once extremist Muslim himself, Keith Ellison, formerly Keith Hakeem, are advocating for a plan that would mirror a plan being implemented in St. Petersburg, Florida, by their police department there. This plan would send unarmed public safety liaisons or social workers to calls that police would normally respond to. Some of these nonviolent calls that would get no police response would be things like disorderly intoxication, mental health crisis, drug overdose, homeless complaints, neighbor disputes. Any sane person who's ever dealt with any of these issues being labeled as nonviolent knows that they each have an extremely high likelihood, that a suspect involved will become escalated. The scene will rapidly deteriorate, resulting in physical aggression and resistance, and require the justified use of force by a police officer to control the situation. And you might be thinking, there's no way this will happen. It'll never come to this. But look around at what police leaders are saying, and the efforts to fundamentally change policing in our major cities is endorsed by city council members, mayors, top cops, and elected officials that don't care to listen to the citizens that reside in their cities and depend on that blanket of protection that's provided. The message by these leaders is suspiciously synonymous. Listen to them. The verbiage is almost the same. It's almost identical from Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot to Jacob Fry in Minneapolis and leaders from cities like Seattle and Portland, Los Angeles, Austin, Baltimore, and everywhere in between. They seem to be reading from the same script. They're saying, if you play the YouTube videos of Jacob Fry, if you play YouTube videos of Lori Lightfoot, if you go back and you do your research, they're saying the same thing. It's almost as it was written down and handed to them, like they're reading from a script. The question is, who's writing the script? Very interesting and challenging times. We're gonna try to figure out who's writing that script. We're gonna talk about the George Floyd incident in great detail with Dustin Reichert. He's coming up right after the break. Please stick around. Make sure to get that OpsLens app downloaded if you haven't. It's pretty interesting. Rocky Stucci has a program. The Matt Locke Show is over there. If you're listening on Mojo, iHeartRadio, stick around. We're going to be back right after the break. This is the Patriotically Correct Radio Show, live on our first day. We're glad to be here.
They're no Rocky Stucci, but they'll have to do. The low-budget answer for your deranged listening habits. Stu and Rich. Patriotically Correct Radio. Snowflakes caught you listening again.
Well, you happen to have caught me in a moment of self-pleasure.
Stewie and Richie, the Patriotically Correct Radio Show is on the Warrior Radio Network.
The Democrats are lousy politicians. They really are. Horrible policies, open borders, crime is fine.
Welcome to the future, bitches.
They wake up every morning to stars, stripes, guns, and carbon emissions. Hey, who farted? Stu and Rich. Patriotically Correct Radio.
Welcome back. My name is Stu Peters. I'm your lovely host of this low-budget show. It's called Patriotically Correct Radio. Joining us here very quickly is Dustin Reichert. Dustin is a former Anoka County Sheriff's Deputy here in Minnesota, was involved in a critical incident in which he exchanged gunfire with a gunman, resulted in death. I'm going to let him tell you about it, but I just want to play some of the audio from 1088officerdown.com. This is absolutely bone-chilling to me, and I get goosebumps every time I hear it. It's just, this is awful.
Adam 40 backing, Adam 57. 229.
This is how it starts. A police officer is shot. Suspect is dead.
Information for cars, officer down in Andover. 8140th lane, officer down, ambulance en route. 3 Bravo 5 route. 4013 en route. 4038 route. 1308 route.
I want to give you a live look from Chopper 5 at the scene in Andover in the North Metro.
Can we just heard gunshots?
Yes, we are aware of it, and we've got help on the way out there.
Deputy Reichert got to the house, saw a man with a gun near the doorway. Reichert was shot twice, the dead man once.
You hear a pop, 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 and I, first instinct dropped to the ground.
It is a routine thing, and we answer hundreds of these types of calls on an annual basis.
And then the next thing I know, there's sirens everywhere, and the road is just filled with squads up and down. I'm glad that officers came over and saved our lives.
Yeah, I mean, and who knows how that thing turns out if if deputies aren't there. I mean, this guy was obviously completely unstable, and maybe before we get going, Dustin, into the questions that I want to ask you, maybe can you just tell us, walk us through that? How did that happen? By the way, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Stu.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, good Monday. It's kind of a dynamic scenario. It's easy, but it's not. Loud music call. I think it was a Thursday night, 2 a.m. No party, no cars in the driveway. Just a call that if it wasn't actually for the fact that it was a rougher street in that suburb, I probably wouldn't even have arrived. My partner was handling it, but being brand new and just a couple days on her own, I decided to back her up and Bee Gees music in the driveway, and this is going to be quick and easy. Turn the music down and go back to sleep.
They were playing the Bee Gees.
The Bee Gees, yes. No
so you roll up, and I mean, this is nothing different than you or I sitting next to our fire next to the house, having a few too many beers, and the music gets a little loud, and we just need a friendly reminder, and that's what's going to happen here. That's what's going through your mind as you're rolling up, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's not going to be tickets or enforcement. It's just turn it down. Maybe it's time to head to bed. And it was actually inside, so there wasn't even any heading in orders. So
okay, so you arrive. Take us through it then. You arrive, the Bee Gees are on, you're walking up to the door.
Partner knocks on the door. I see a man with a gun in the window walking towards the window. We move away in a little bit better protected position, but there's no real safe spot. And as he comes out, you got to make some decisions as a police officer. And as he starts opening the doors, we're making the commands, and we see the gun start to be exposed. It becomes, do you run and possibly get shot in the back, or do you address it thinking this isn't going to go anywhere, and I'm not going to get shot in the back. That's what I can tell you. So committed to it and continued the orders as I had my gun out, and as he raised his gun to my chest from about 5 to 8 feet away, I raised mine up, and by the time I pulled the trigger, he had it pointed between my eyes.
Who got hit first?
He got hit first once, and then he returned fire just a second or two later as he was tracking me running past the window.
A lot of these TV shows and movies depict gunfire from cops to bad guys or bad guys to cops. You know, they get shot and then they just, you know, they're immediately dead or they blow back 6 feet. Truth, for those of you that don't know and have not had the experience, fortunately for you, of being involved in a fatal shooting, that is not how it happens at all. And there is still a lot of life left in a lot of people that are shot. And so just because you deployed around to this guy's... Where? Center mass somewhere? You shot him in the chest, or where'd you hit him?
Right around, hit him. I don't remember if it was right or left lung area.
Okay, and then, but I mean, so you said 1 or 2 seconds. That's a long time, given the fact that most police-involved shootings, these gun battles last about like 6 seconds at most, and dozens of rounds can be fired in that amount of time. So you wrote a book. It's called 1088 Officer Down. It's available here at 1088officerdown.com. I have the website on the screen right now for people that are watching us on the OpsLens app, or for people that come back and want to listen to this thing again for whatever reason. I don't know why in the hell anybody would ever want to. If you go through the pain of listening to me once live and then you go back to YouTube, you probably have a mental health issue, and we should get that addressed. So the book you wrote is, give us a rundown on the book.
You know, it was part of my healing process. You know, a lot of people think that it's simple and easy and you just go back to work after you heal up. And there's a lot of emotional things that are involved with nearly dying and taking a life. And there's a lot of there's a ton of administrative things that happen when it comes to a police shooting. And it took its toll. And eventually I medically retired. And the process of healing, I wanted to tell my story so that I can maybe change some things for other officers in the future and heal myself. And that's kind of how it developed.
Are you healed?
You know, I'd say for the most part, you know, having acknowledging post-traumatic stress disorder or PTS or PTSD, I would say as healed as I'm comfortable with. I definitely keep acknowledging it. And I'd say that I have an understanding. And I understand it a lot, and I can get help when I need it. But that's not always true for a lot of the men and women that suffer either in law enforcement, military, other EMS.
Well, I just want to say thank you for your service. And you know what I do for a living. I'm a bounty hunter, and just to be candid and 100% transparent, Dustin and I do know each other personally, which is probably why he agreed to come on this show. I don't think anybody is just knocking down the door to get over here talking to me. But so you know how I feel about cops. And you know that I'm the first one jumping out to fight with a cop that needs some help. And you know that I'm the first guy shaking hands and thanking people for their service. So that's not just something that I'm saying on the show here. We really do, in our household under this roof, we really do pray for cops, for police officers' safety every day. And we really genuinely thank heroes like you for getting out there and protecting people, by the way, who you've never met before, running directly into gunfire. Have you, Dustin, ever stopped to look at a potential victim and determine whether or not you were going to provide police service based on the color of their skin?
No, and I know absolutely no police officer that would ever be worried about that.
Yeah. How about if they're a Republican or a Democrat? Do you ask him?
No, I definitely don't think that, no.
Hey, before I go chase this guy down that just assaulted you and raped your wife, I got to know, who do you intend on voting for on November 3rd in the upcoming election?
I'm not a cop anymore, but maybe I could add that. No, that's just silly. Obviously, that's the narrative, but it's not true.
But these are the things that the media and extremist Marxists who have hijacked the Democratic political party would want you to believe. They'd want you to believe that this is actually how cops think. This is how they address situations, that they are violent people with guns. And Keith Ellison, who is the Attorney General for Minnesota, formerly Keith Hakeem, he's a radical Muslim, and somehow after all of the allegations of beating his wife or girlfriend or whatever, I mean, the guy is a parasite. He's the top law enforcement official in the land in the People's Republic of Minnesota. This guy was making statements about how just absolutely ridiculous it is that for every single police call, we send a person with a gun. For domestic disputes, we send somebody with a gun. For drug sales on your block, we send somebody with a gun. Of course we do. Why do we send people with guns, Dustin, to police calls?
Well, his thinking is obviously flawed and politically motivated and to get votes. In the end, we're not sending somebody with a gun. We're sending somebody who's trained, experienced, and who it is their job. And part of their job is to be prepared to defend themselves or the rest of the communities or their partners. And you can't do that. You can't go against a gun with hand-to-hand combat. You can't go against a gun with a taser. It's ridiculous.
You can't?
Stop.
What do you mean?
Well,
Can't you just de-escalate them? Can't you just talk them down?
Sometimes you can talk them down. Sometimes the gun is the de-escalation tool. Sometimes the taser is. But this narrative that the de-escalation needs to happen in law enforcement and more training is ridiculous.
Here's the fact, okay? Here's the fact, and I'm not going to apologize for saying this. It's not a cop's job to de-escalate, okay? It's a cop's job. Actually, the presence of a police officer can oftentimes escalate, all right? Escalate a situation. Your job is to use speed and the violence of action to control situations that could otherwise be harmful, volatile, or bring great imminent bodily harm or death to another. Your job is to be the enforcer of the laws. You are not a psychologist. You are not a judge. You are not an attorney. You don't care about the outcome of this. Your job is to neutralize the situation, and your job is to arrest people and take them to jail. You are an enforcement person, and the reason you have a gun is to protect yourself and to use a gun. Whenever there's a police-involved shooting, it's, he used his gun. Well, of course he did. Why do you think they give guns to cops? They give guns to cops not for show and tell, but to be used. Let's talk about George Floyd. Obviously, this is going on. You watched, now there's been leaked film here recently. Let's leave that aside for a second. You watched everything that the rest of us watched as this thing unfolded. You saw the film. You saw the tapes. Derek Chauvin there with his knee in the neck region of George Floyd. Is this a tactic that you trained in?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. It is a tactic, by the way, that the Minneapolis Police Department trained in. I want to make that perfectly clear. The lateral vascular neck restraint, or the VNR, the vascular neck restraint. These are actually, if you read MPD policy, this was a policy-approved, MPD-approved hold. And I don't know that if you're aware of that or not. Now, so this isn't something that you trained in. Okay. Is it a technique that you're...
To correct you, yes, I am trained in the lateral vascular neck restraint. Using the knee to the neck, I mean, I think that's where we're getting caught up in the media, is that it's going to be one side or the other, and I think you know that I'm not one side or the other. Pinning somebody down, restricting them by their neck, restricting the blood flow to their brain temporarily is not an issue. It is obviously now with some of the laws coming out, but that's something most police officers were trained in, and most policies allowed you to use it.
Would you agree
Whether
that
or not
these
Chauvin was trained that way? I don't know.
Okay, and I've got another question here, but I don't want to get too sidetracked. I have a tendency to do that.
Okay.
So you saw the same thing. He's there. He's got his knee on what appears to be on his neck. Floyd he becomes less and less responsive. Ultimately, he ends up getting an ambulance ride and pronounced dead at the hospital. Jacob Frey, the mayor in that city, if you can call him that, is almost immediately on television, on social media, giving statements before the media that this is a racially charged murder, demanding that these cops are fired immediately, that they're criminally charged. He's promising fundamental change in the Minneapolis Police Department. Minneapolis is better than this. This will not be tolerated. Before any facts, by the way, now you have law enforcement experience. Would you speculate as to whether or not, what is your opinion here? At the time that Mayor Fry first came out and started doing this, had he reviewed the body cam footage? Is that possible?
I can't imagine any way that he had the opportunity to see that body cam footage yet.
Because it takes time, right? I mean, the BCA, which is the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension here in Minnesota, they're involved with this. They're now investigating this. Minneapolis police investigators have an independent investigation of their own. The feds are coming because of the way it was escalated. These people aren't just letting some mayor just go look at body cam footage within hours before. I mean, George Floyd probably still was warm, his body temperature, while he's giving these statements. There's no way he's seen this body cam footage. How can he articulate what it is that happened over there on the streets of Minneapolis near Powderhorn? How can he do that?
It's tough because you watch his speech was very practiced and his emotional outbreaks were very, very perfectly timed. There's just no way. Even if he did see it, then what I'm seeing is somebody who used their authority to get something outside of what should have been the normal timeline in order to make his decision. I don't think that happened, but if he did, I'd say he cheated a little bit to do it.
So if you're Mayor Fry, you're the mayor of Minneapolis, this happens on your watch, how do you address the public when there is cell phone footage being distributed all over the internet of this white cop with his knee on the neck of a black dude who appears to be unarmed? You hadn't seen anything leading up to that. You really don't know, and it actually becomes irrelevant when this guy's got his knee on the neck of this other guy for a period of 8 or 9 minutes. At this point, it does start to look like George Floyd is a victim more so than he's a suspect. How do you combat that? How do you keep calm in your city? And what would your message be to your citizens if you're charged with the unfortunate duties of addressing them in the wake of something like this?
Oh, Mayor Reichert, that's kind of scary. Now, Mayor Fry, I strongly believe, needs to understand he's not an activist at this point. He is a leader and a city representative, and his job is to lead, to do what he can to keep calm, and he failed in that area completely. He actually joined the other side to inflame it. Is there a way to calm this? No, there really isn't. You got to ask people to wait, and I think that we're starting to see it. I just watched the actual full video release this morning, not the leaked one, but the actual clear ones. And it doesn't exonerate everybody, but it changes the dynamic and narrative. It makes it a lot less racial than anything else. It's just crazy. And he just jumped on the gun. To me, what feels like he's pandering for votes and support.
There are confirmed reports that there are cell phone videos circling around. I know that people have seen this. I know that it can make people upset. It makes me upset. Anybody who's not upset watching a human die has problems, sociopathic issues. I understand what you're feeling. We cannot confirm the validity of the content of these videos. We cannot confirm whether or not something happened leading up to this. We don't know if the suspect, not victim, if the suspect was a threat to himself or to others. We are in the information gathering stage. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is on scene. Police investigators with Minneapolis are on scene. We promise to get to the bottom of this, be 100% transparent. We will be here minute by minute giving you updates on this. Anything that the mayor's office can do to provide assistance to law enforcement, as the chief, who I trust, is going through some very difficult times. The officers involved there have just witnessed a horrible thing happen. We're going to make sure that they get some treatment. I mean, aren't these kind of more along the lines of something that a leader would say versus an activist?
Yeah, I'm starting to think it might have to be Mayor Stu Peters now.
Absolutely not. No way. Listen, man, I love Minneapolis, but it's a shithole. It's turning into an absolute shithole, And I'm not proud of it anymore. We don't see people united anymore like we did. And I 100% blame the lack of leadership in Minneapolis. And that comes from city council through the mayor's office and into administrative levels of law enforcement at the Minneapolis Police Department. To no fault of their own, Minneapolis cops are essentially useless, worthless on the streets, because if they go do a police job, what happens to them, Dustin?
Oh, you do your job and somebody complains, then you're going to get more heat. You do your job and you have to take somebody's life or use force, you're going to get more heat, possibly lose your job, maybe criminally prosecuted. Why would you? Here, Baltimore, throughout the country, Ferguson, it's the same.
This started in Ferguson,
more liberal big cities.
By the way, that event is back in the news. They actually brought in another prosecutor to try and jam up Darren Wilson on that case from Ferguson, at which point a criminal thug bully was justifiably shot and killed by who I consider to be one of the greatest heroes in American history, at least in current times, by Darren Wilson. And this is what started the whole false narrative of hands up, don't shoot. And it's a false narrative because his hands were not up. He had just got done committing a crime. He had a history. He was a violent criminal thug, a career criminal who is dead based on his own actions. He forced himself to be shot. I don't know about a whole lot about George Floyd other than what is coming out now, that this is nothing new for him, that he has a very extensive criminal history, and that up until the very last breath that he took, he was perpetuating more criminal activity. He was committing a felony forgery, or at least had been alleged to have been. He was a suspect in that. He was being arrested for that, and then he was resisting police, which again is more criminal activity. We've seen new film now, right? Some film has been leaked. They're going to get to the bottom of this. I guarantee you who leaked it. I'm sure there was a six-figure payday. It's not going to take a whole lot of effort to figure out who leaked this thing. I believe I heard that it went to the UK first, or to British News, and then came back here. You've watched the new tape. It's been leaked. If you haven't seen it, you're listening to the show. It's all over the internet. Dustin, you've seen it. To this new information, you say what?
You know, and actually, as of at least this morning, I know they came out with the order the other day, but this morning I did get to see the actual, so it is out there, the full unleaked
Well, they didn't have a choice now. I mean, they had to.
Yeah, which I'm glad. I mean, I don't know why they were holding on to those videos. It doesn't make sense.
We'll get to that.
Watch the videos. Yeah, when you watch the videos, it seems to, I'm not saying it's exonerating anybody, but it certainly clears up a lot of things on Lane's part, and I don't know if you say it, Kuhn's part. Those two, you see a lot less of an issue.
Okay.
Tuatau, it's hard. We don't see his video, but I did notice today that there was a body cam under the squad. So I don't know if that was Chauvin, who you don't see one on his shirt at all. Maybe that's his that fell under the car.
Yeah, I mean, there was a physical altercation. There was active resistance happening at the time of Floyd's arrest. And Absolutely. So, you know, these things are magnetic. You know, you didn't have to wear one when you were a deputy sheriff. I do wear one. Everybody on the Minneapolis Police Department wears one, specifically those that are in enforcement roles and positions. So Chauvin would have been required to be wearing a body camera. If he wasn't, he was acting outside of policy, at which point he could be fired for that policy violation. But as far as what you said, that this looks like it clears a lot of things up. Explain that. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, we all know what the narrative has been, is that he was targeted because he was a black man. And we know that's not true, that it just happens to be two officers. One was a black American and the other one was a white American, arrived to the call, and then their backup's going to be a white and Asian Hmong, I believe, individual officer. And there was nothing color about it. The people at Cup Foods, those were immigrants. I'm not sure what nationality. It's a variety and a whole hodgepodge of different personalities, cultures, and races coming together here. It was a crime. You passed a $20 bill. It looks like it was a fake $20 bill. I think they found some more in the car. There's nothing color or about this. They were respectful as could be the whole time. I know there's a big issue about the gun being pulled out, but you know what? I think that we've all learned, show your hands. I teach my white kids that if you get pulled over, window down, radio off, light on, hands on the steering wheel, give them no question.
You were a cop. Let me ask you something. I'm a white guy, and I will never, ever apologize for that. I will never apologize for my whiteness. I will never apologize, ever. I will die in a pile of spent shell casings before I will ever apologize for my whiteness. I'm a white guy. You were a cop. Could I make you shoot me in about 2 seconds flat?
Yeah, you do the wrong moves. Absolutely.
Right. Are you seeing me as a white guy when I'm doing actions that are going to make you use deadly force against me? I mean, are you going, oh my God, this is a white guy. I can't believe this is happening. Are you thinking like that? I mean, come on, let's be real. Where does this come from?
We see the gun. We see the actions. We see the gun. We see the lack of actions. That's what we see.
You see the active resistance.
Police officers, and, you know, obviously in the job that you do too, hands. Hands are everything. If we
gotta see them.
Hands, got to see them, and we know we're safe. If we don't see them and they're starting to hide them, you can actually see him put his, when I watch the videos, you can see what looks like him actually reaching to the back seat at one point.
Yeah, I've told people a lot of times, hey, don't make your hands disappear, okay? And, you know, you come up with creative ways that, you know, language that you think works over the years. And, you know, everybody has kind of their own style. But what it comes down to is, look, if I have to use deadly force and you're going to make me use deadly force, these interactions and the outcome of these interactions and the result of these interactions is dictated by and large by the suspect in these instances. Am I right?
Absolutely.
So if George Floyd gets out of that vehicle,
20 seconds.
Right. If George Floyd gets out of that vehicle, shows his hands, and is 100% cooperative, is he a dead criminal right now?
No, not at all.
Right. This is common sense, people. Do I believe that there are ignorant racists in law enforcement? I do. I believe that we will never get away from racism in our country. I believe that there are ignorant people everywhere in all professions that are racist. And I think that that's just something that we understand that we have to accept as an unfortunate reality, that people are ignorant. Humans are dumb, and Americans are really stupid, and they're showing that stupidity right now. Just look at the polls. I mean, Biden actually has people that are willing to support him. So that tells you that there are actually very, very mentally challenged Americans here who are being intimidated and then also being brainwashed and given a false narrative. Dustin, Keith Ellison, the Attorney General here, withheld that body camera footage. Or Mike Freeman did, the Hennepin County attorney. Why?
I'm asking myself the same question. Even as they fought and threatened to go after the people that leaked it, why? What was the problem?
Well, it's because they knew
it clears up a few things.
They knew what was on it. Okay, so if you know that it's on it and it clears things up, we can only expect, or we can only suspect, that there's one reason why this body camera footage was withheld. And the directive came from somebody. Somebody said, listen, that would clear some things up. We can't have that right now. About 30 seconds left. Tell us about your book and where we can get it.
You know, you can go to the website 1088toofficerdown.com. It's all about not just the path of the shooting, but the path of the physical healing and the emotional and mental healing that can happen when you're involved in something so traumatic on both sides. Are
you going to come back and visit us again on this low budget afternoon show?
I'm only coming back if I get to have Rich on here too.
That's right. You are a Richard fan, aren't you?
I like Rich. He's a good guy.
Rich is gone this week. By the way, for those of that don't know the program or Richard heroically serves our country. He is a veteran of the Minnesota Army National Guard. He is a Purple Heart recipient. He is currently at Camp Ripley drilling. This is his week to be gone. So, of course, the first week the show is on, the co-host isn't there. But I do have Intern Boy here looking over our technical difficulties. Intern Boy does not have a face. He doesn't have a name. He's not allowed an opinion. He just hasn't earned the right. So you probably won't ever meet him either, Dustin. But Richard will be here. He'll be here the next time you're here, and I'll let him do all the interacting with you, okay? You and your little man crush.
You know what, Stu? You got to be on there, too. That's
Yeah,
just the rule.
all right. He's a hero. He's a former Anoka County Sheriff's deputy. He is the author of 1088 Officer Down. He brings a wealth of information to this program, makes us sound good. 1088officerdown.com, 1088officerdown.com, 1088officerdown.com. Get there, get the book, read the book. If you have questions for Dustin, you can find him on social media all over the place. He also pontificates on these police use of force things. We're going to have him back to talk more about that. He was at every single hearing for the Philando Castile deal. If you don't know about that, go check it out. There's a blog there. And he has one about the George Floyd incident. Dustin, real quick, what is it? In the matter of the death of George Floyd?
In the matter of the death of George Floyd, yes.
Okay. We're going to catch him next time. Make sure that you get over to OpsLens, download that app so that you can watch us if you so choose. If you are trapped in the car and have absolutely nothing better to do, we appreciate you on iHeartRadio and Mojo 50 Radio. For Richard Leonard and Dustin, my name is Stu. See you next time.